Welcome back to A People's Guide to Publishing. I'm Joe Beal, the founder and CEO of Microcosm Publishing and Distribution. I'm also the author of A People's Guide to Publishing, which distills what I've learned from selling millions of books over the past 25 years.
I'm Ellie Blue. I'm the editorial and marketing director here at Microcosm. We are an independent mid-list publisher based in Portland, Oregon. We have 14 employees, over 650 titles in print with 20 to 40 new books per year, and we distribute thousands of titles from other publishers.
We started this podcast so that we can share what we've learned with newer publishers so that you can learn from our mistakes.
Or perhaps you just want to better understand the publishing industry.
This week, we are going to talk about how COVID has interrupted the supply chain. Wait, no, that sounds really boring. How COVID has made publishing really dang difficult.
By really basically fucking with globalism.
Yes.
As well as domesticism. It's fucked with everything.
Domesticity. I would say it was probably been the most hard hit. I would say that a lot of the reality here is that we have been living off of artificially cheap labor in the United States for decades, and COVID has revealed that in a way that most things don't. Hot take.
All right, well, walk us through that from the beginning. How has COVID affected material flow and supply chains in a way that publishers will feel?
So, maybe more than a few. Let's say 10 years ago, when the sort of simultaneous hit of digital printing intersected with the rise of the ebook and the expectation that ebooks would eclipse print in terms of sales, publishers, big and small, but especially medium to big, cut back their amount of on-hand inventory, whereas it used to be something along the lines of 2 years, and then now the expectation is really 6 months or less is what you produce at a time. And there's a lot of reasons for this, but the biggest reason is the number of books sold through, meaning like sold and not returned, has gone down dramatically over the past 10 years for the average book. Meaning, once upon a time, in the 1980s, you were pretty much guaranteed to sell tens of thousands of Grandma's Barbecue Outdoor Cookbook. Nowadays, if you publish that, you would probably sell hundreds, and if you were really lucky, you might hit 2,000.
So publishers are selling fewer books, also keeping fewer books on hand, which means
they're printing fewer books at a time.
So when suddenly COVID hits and everybody wants to read again, and they especially want to read these same 10 books, then what happens?
Then that's where that 6-month window really hits hard, because then if a book has a rapid ascension in sales, it becomes like a 6-month supply suddenly can be a 1 or 2 month supply.
Right, or even shorter.
Yes. And then you go back to your printer and you're like, hey, we got a real hot one here. Give me 50,000 more. And the printer is like, we got a 2-month backup and it might be getting worse. That's my imitation of a printer. And they, and so you're like, okay, well, we really need them, so we got to commit to this. And then, like months go by and you have more and more of these hits. And so the sort of unreported story of COVID is that book sales are up.
Like way up.
In general. Like, I wouldn't say they're way up in general.
I guess some books are way up.
Books, period, are up across the board. So, on average, book sales are up 1 to 25%, depending on who you ask, over the same period of time last year. And, of course, that doesn't mean, like, oh, we published a brand new book, it's selling like wildfire. That means certain select backlist and especially bestsellers, Toni Morrison, so you want to talk about race, books that were steady, good books, are suddenly like have a newfound interest that was unforeseen, let's say. And that is really mucking things up.
Yeah, we have been having some I mean, yeah, how does that affect us as distributors as well as publishers?
So it's kind of twofold. So we are selling more books. So that's good. People are buying more books. Also good. And as a publisher, we hold a little more than the industry average of 6 months. So again, good. We're a little more prepared than most. Though we are still running out of books left and right and reprinting left and right, and often we will reprint, and then before the reprint ships, we'll have to order another reprint.
So when we run out of books and we have to reprint, what is the lag time? How long are we waiting for the reprint?
Well, in a best case scenario, it's about 3 weeks, including freight time, so that's like Illinois to Oregon, whatever that is, 15 working days plus 4 days freight time, works out to pretty reasonable.
That's pre-COVID.
Yeah. And so nowadays, it's more like, well, we ordered it 5 weeks ago, should be shipping any time now.
I mean, we have one book that we're waiting on now that we sent to print August 25th.
Yeah, for example. So, it can be 3 months, but let's look at a much worse example since we're catastrophizing here. So when you print something in China, you normally work through a print broker, and sometimes you don't even know that. And that print broker is never going to say, no, we don't want your business. And also, no printer is going to say, we don't want your business. They're going to be like, oh yeah, we'll do our best. We're a few days behind, but we'll see. And then months go by, and we've had this before, even with like domestic printers, where months go by and you're like, the pub date is approaching. Are they coming? And they're like, oh, we're doing our best. We're doing our best. And, 4 months we've seen sometimes, I think, at the worst. But when you print in China, and sometimes what will happen is you have a book that you really have no option other than printing in China. So, like, for example, the Tattoo Tarot, you can see, has some beautiful gold embossing. And it has this, like, box. And it has this full color booklet. And it has this inset. And it has this, they're trying to put some thought into your experience as a consumer, let's just say. And so if you printed this domestically, you would be very hard pressed to sell it for $17.99. So you go to other places. And this is a manufactured in China. It says it right on the box, so under no doubts here. Publisher is British, Lawrence King. Props to you, Lawrence King. You've made a beautiful package. And, we constantly run out of this. We constantly order more. We order, sometimes we'll order more copies literally every day. And months will go by and we will not get them. And then we'll get cases and cases and cases one day because it's finally reprinted. At that point, we have to hope that the customers are still interested because obviously, you don't want to be missing the major holidays that the stores wanted them for, or, people like this kind of thing for the experience. And, it's cheap enough that it could be an impulsive buy, but these are the problems created by COVID. So, one part, it's like demand is up. On the other side, supply is down. So it's like sort of the same way that, used cars are priced through the roof because new car manufacturing went way down. So, and while demand for cars went up, same exact problem, supply down, demand up. And then, it's not like we create a bidding war for the copies we have, because it's more like there's a fixed price, there's laws and industry standards. So books don't really have the benefits of supply and demand like other industries do. It's sort of the other interesting thing.
So, I feel like the other part of this is that, like, maybe you're a publisher that prints in the US and you have no problem supplying your books, but, like, we can tell you as a distributor, like, a lot of our customers' orders are getting held up like they might have 3 of your books and 1 of a book that's reprinting in China. They're not going to get that order for X amount of time, and also nobody at these publishers that print in China is there to answer the phone and tell us when those things are arriving.
Which brings us to problem number 2, publisher furloughs and layoffs and downsizing. So as you might imagine, when you predictively cut your entire staff in March or April because you're expecting the global economy to tank, and the opposite happens within publishing, you are sort of caught with your pants down when you just aren't prepared to deal with managing reprints or figuring out, how to best run your company like a smart person, or you're found, like we have been, despite hiring quite a few more people, being like, we cannot keep up with the work. It's just impossible, no matter how many people we hire. We should have hired them much earlier, trained them sooner, so they could have jumped on this, so, and literally, we can have a book that's been reprinting for 3-4 months, and you call the publisher, and you find out their phone system has been disconnected. You're like, that's weird, everybody's probably working from home, and then you email the publisher, and all of the emails bounce, and you're like, did the publisher go out of business? Let's look in the news. No reporting about this whatsoever.
And we're still occasionally getting shipments from them.
Most confusingly.
But not necessarily all the books we order, just some of them.
Yeah. And so, and a lot of publishers, it ties right back into the same issue of, they warehouse remotely. That's all outsourced. So all of these things can kind of function without human oversight, but not well.
And we definitely have no way of knowing if something is reprinting and will ship, or if it won't and we should cancel all the orders, or right. We have no idea. And meanwhile, the sales reps are calling us and being like, hey, this customer really wants to know where their order is, and we're just like, no idea.
Can't tell you. And then, a lot of times we'll cut and ship an order, and then the next day those will arrive.
Yep.
And you gotta, it's like the facepalm moment of all, because communication breaks down. And part of it too is when everybody gets busier, they don't really have time to be like, your order for 80 copies of blah 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 is expected on such and such date. And when you do get that kind of communication, it's almost always wrong. So
it's so true. What's the third problem?
The third problem is the increased demand. It's
right.
The people are suddenly stuck in their houses ferociously reading.
And doing tarot readings as well.
Apparently so. They want to know the future.
Don't we all?
And so that was not expected. And Ryan, who consults us on our supply chain management.
Hi, Ryan.
He speculated that this was a product of people not being able to make disposable income purchases elsewhere. That instead of going out to eat or going to the movies or whatever, they're buying books, reading, being at home, apparently doing tarot readings, and, hard to really, and, and a lot of the, industry jabber was that, children's books and puzzles would be the real hit. And maybe it was, but we didn't see it. We really saw adult nonfiction reading. That was what people wanted.
I guess that's what people know to come to us for.
Right, but even when we brought in those other things, we didn't really get the puzzle sales or the children's book sales or, certainly not in line with the news. Though, I guess this is a bad week to make fun of the media. The media is, for the most part, honest and accurate. Let's just go on the record saying that. And should be funded better than the police. Also want to go out on that hot take.
This has been...
Thanks for joining us once again.
Please send your questions to podcast@microcosmpublishing.com so we can answer them on future episodes.
And please give us 5 stars on iTunes and everywhere else that podcasts are reviewed.
You can find us on the internet at microcosm.pub.
On Twitter at Microcosm.
On Facebook at Microcosm Publishing.
On Instagram at Microcosm_pub.
And here in Portland, Oregon on North Williams Avenue.
Thank you so much.
Have a wonderful week.